Zimbabweans will also be casting their ballots, this time on Monday, in the first election since the resignation of Robert Mugabe. The build-up to the poll has been dominated by concerns over transparency of the electoral process. Here's CGTN's Farai Mwakutuya with the latest.
This eagerly anticipated election pits a new-look ZANU-PF led by Emmerson Mnangagwa against at least 55 political parties, although the main challenge will come from Nelson Chamisa's MDC alliance. Now, both men have been campaigning across the length and breadth of Zimbabwe, however, come to the capital, Harare, today for their final rallies. Today is the final day of official campaigns, according to the Electoral Commission. Now, many people I've spoken to here have been encouraged by the peaceful environment that has characterized the build-up to this election, but many of them can't wait for July 30th so they can have their say.
Our president promised a free and fair election. So it's like it's a free and fair election first of its kind in Zimbabwe.
It doesn't matter who wins. What we want from them is action. Let their campaign promises not be lip service. We want to vote, and I know that I'm going to vote by 8 in the morning.
We want a totally free and fair election, which reflects the correct support on the ground.
They certainly don't have much longer to wait. That election is now just hours away. The Zimbabwe Electoral Commission says final results of the vote are expected within 5 days of the election day. To win the presidential election, a candidate is required to get at least a 51% majority. If any of the candidates fail to get that, then a runoff will be required, and that is scheduled for September the 8th. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Well, let's get you more now on Zimbabwe's election preparations. I'm joined live from Bulawayo by CGTN's Voldi Karolse. Voldi, what's the latest on election preparations there? Is the commission ready?
Well, Karen, as you heard from Farai, the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission gave a press briefing yesterday saying they held meetings with the European Union, the African Union, as well as the Commonwealth election observers who are in the country to make sure that this vote goes ahead in a free and fair environment. They're saying they are ready. They've printed over 6 million ballot papers. There are over, here in Bulawayo where we are, there are just over 230,000 registered voters. The ZEC, or ZEC as it's known here in Zimbabwe, saying they've deployed all of their essential personnel and equipment to the thousands of voting stations across the country, and they're certainly ready for tomorrow. Maybe I'll just give you a quick briefing. Accreditation is still underway here in Bulawayo where we're stationed, and that's for the various church groups who will act as election observers. Certainly hundreds of them are heading to a local hotel to try and get accreditation, because without accreditation you won't be allowed into the polling stations, and that of course is a rule that's in place for the media as well, covering tomorrow's vote. But as far as the Electoral Commission is concerned, in Zimbabwe, they're ready for people to go out and vote in their millions on Monday.
And Voldi, Bulawayo, where you are, is considered an opposition stronghold. How much support does Emmerson Mnangagwa have over there?
You're absolutely right, Karen. I mean, in the last elections back in 2013, the MDC took all of the parliamentary and council seats. All 12 of those parliamentary seats went to the MDC, but unfortunately the MDC split earlier this year, and now that coalition of 7 parties is split between the MDC alliance led by Nelson Chamisa that Farai referred to in his package earlier, and the MDC-T led by former Deputy Prime Minister Thokozani Kupe. Now, she held her final rally here in Bulawayo, her hometown, yesterday, with quite a modest crowd. Now, analysts and commentators are saying the fact that the MDC isn't united means that that vote will be fractured, and this might give the ruling party ZANU-PF under Mnangagwa a chance to actually regain some of those parliamentary and council seats, particularly in the areas that are MDC strongholds. And they're anticipating that perhaps what will happen tomorrow, because ZANU-PF has been touting the fact that they'll try and get some of these council and parliamentary seats back from the opposition, is that that vote will be split because of the fracture within the MDC. And while the people we haven't spoken to haven't expressed outright support for ZANU-PF under Mnangagwa, I think what they are really looking for is change. And that's a ticket that ZANU-PF is campaigning under, saying that they'll make sure that Zimbabwe is, quote, open for business. That's, of course, ZANU-PF's campaign slogan, attracting more foreign investment into the country to try and get this economy working, to try and address the cash crunch that they're currently facing, Karen.
And Voldy, finally, let's talk about security. This vote is coming weeks after a blast in Bulawayo that took place during a Mnangagwa rally. What sort of security has been put in place in the city?
Well, the police are saying there is a record number of officers deployed across the country, 71,000, and that's a record number since they've held elections in the country. The military is also on standby to help secure the vote, and all military leave has been cancelled for essential personnel, just in case there might be any incidents. We haven't seen an increase in security around Bulawayo. We've been to various polling stations, seen the officials starting to get ready to set up ahead of tomorrow. But there isn't certainly an increased police presence. There aren't any roadblocks or checks as you go through the city here. But obviously it is Sunday. Many Zimbabweans are in church today. It's a very, very quiet day here. The final rallies were held yesterday in Harare. And interestingly, now former President Robert Mugabe is set to address the media in just a few moments in Harare from what's known as the Blue Roof, his residence, and I suppose he will throw his observations about the upcoming elections into the ring. We haven't heard from him since he was ousted, so it will be interesting to hear what Mugabe has to say, which party, which candidate, which presidential candidate he'll throw his weight around. That's certainly something that people are eagerly anticipating here. But certainly security for Bulawayo residents isn't top of mind. What is really is getting to the polling stations early and making their mark.
Okay, CGTN's Voldy Carol, so thank you for that update. That was Voldy in Bulawayo there, following preparations for tomorrow's, Monday's, elections in Zimbabwe. Well, final campaign rallies took place at the weekend in the Zimbabwean capital, Harare. Farai was there at the two rallies and filed this report.
The opposition MDC alliance occupied a site they call Freedom Square and staged the final rally before crossing over to what they believe will be a new Zimbabwe. Nelson Chamisa says despite alleged collusion between the Electoral Commission and the ruling party to rig, the election is a done deal.
It's no longer about this election.
We are not worried about this election. We have already won it. It's a delayed march, and their former stalwart Mugabe is not there anymore. We are already in discussions with serious international investors in mining, agriculture and tourism, and you have told them that as soon as we are in office, we will respond to the national demand.
The opposition alliance has deployed 44,000 election agents to guard its vote. Across town, President Mnangagwa told ZANU-PF supporters to maintain the peace that's ushered in increased economic growth, attracted foreign investment interest, and which has the people of Zimbabwe believing again. He called on the party to reinvent itself and focus on the people, though there are some things it won't tamper with. He said his government would undertake a land audit.
When we took our land, some senior officials took multiple farms. If anyone is found to have multiple farms, we will take them back and give them to our people.
ZANU-PF supporters have been assured by their leader that he's not taking their votes for granted. He says he's already worked hard and will continue to do so if they deliver victory to him on Monday. The tightly contested election has been dominated by the economy. specifically getting it back on track after years of decline. Both parties have promised to create jobs, an environment conducive for investment, and to restore relations with the international community. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.